We don't have there. That's a little better, right? Okay, welcome. Good to have you here. And I think we are a few minutes after 7. We better get started because that cake might not last very long. If we don't. We had no idea. On a Thursday night, we're kind of out of our regular schedule, what to expect. So you have to eat a lot of cake tonight. But thank you for coming. I think it's going to be a really special evening. We have a real special man with us tonight, Jeff Siegel. And I had my first conversation with him was about an hour and a half, and it was by phone. And I knew after that conversation that I want to get to know this guy better. I had another hour and a half conversation with him today over lunch, and that confirmed my initial feelings. And I'm excited for not only tonight, but Sunday morning he's going to be here and share what the Lord has done in his life in a fuller way. He's going to share a lot tonight, as well as lead us in this Passover Seder meal from a messianic fulfillment perspective. And I think that's going to be educational and deeply meaningful to all of us. So I'm looking forward to that. Jeff lives in New York City. Well, what part of New York?
A place called West Naya.
West Naya.
It's across the Tappan Bridge. 1 hour from Manhattan by train on Metro North, and about 10 minutes from New Jersey. It's really an incredible location. Anyway smaller concrete of Manhattan. And so it's a very beautiful area, a little bit rural, not as rural as here, but it's a very nice area.
Well, I'm going to ask if we can just open our evening in prayer, and I'm going to let him kind of move up himself rather than me asking him and so let's open it in prayer. Lord Jesus, we come to this event tonight in your name, knowing, God, that there is so much depth, so much wisdom, so much fulfillment in what took place that night before you began your life. So much that the world yet doesn't understand. So Lord, tonight as we share in this experience and in the fellowship around it, we ask that you would give us understanding tonight, and that this understanding would ignite within us a yearning for even more. Because with you there is no end to the fullness that you give. And Lord, we want to hunger for that tonight. So thank you for bringing Jeff Siegel here, and thank you for what you've put on his heart and for what you're going to do in speaking to ours tonight. We pray this in your name, Jesus. Amen. So would you welcome Jeff Siegel?
Since we're so close, can everybody hear me without me using this? And the reason is because of the amount of people in the room and the largeness. It echoes a little with this, but it doesn't without. So I'm going to go without this. And for now, I don't even have to be limited to standing back at this table. I can get a little closer to you too. Okay, so my name is Jeff Siegel, and on Sunday, I'm going to share my testimony in full. So sometimes when I do a Messiah and Passover, however I do it, I'll include that, but I won't, because I'm going to give you a little bit longer version on Sunday, which will help you to imagine something called like apologetics, or a Jewish objection to believing in Jesus, what those objections were, and how through miracles, God through people overcame those objections, and then my own private prayers between the Lord and I. And so that will be on Sunday. So today, I'm going to share with you, I'll try to skip the testimony. I may touch on it just a little bit. I had the privilege to live kind of in these parts. I grew up in Chicago. And I went to Champaign-Urbana, University of Illinois, and I played baseball. I pitched from 73 to 76. I did get saved through friends from Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I actually was the junior varsity coach after my senior year in college, Coach Albrock said, hey, why don't you stick around a couple of years, work on a master's degree in physical education at that time. And so it was during that time period that I came to faith in Jesus. And so after college and years later, I got married to a beautiful Swedish woman who at our wedding says, your God is my God, your people are my people, very much like Ruth. And kind of that testimony with Terry and I, a Gentile who really loves the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through his son, Jesus Christ. And for us, I've had the privilege to be part of a Jewish ministry called Chosen People Ministries. And I was the New York Regional Director for 3 years. We did kind of evangelistic campaigns where brothers and sisters like yourself would come from all churches all over the world. And we would do training in the morning and the afternoon. We would go to Manhattan, to Brooklyn, and all different areas where Jewish people are, anywhere from secular, like Wall Street Jews, to the ultra-Orthodox or the curly Jews. And so during that time, a church like yours, Southern Baptist Church, in North Carolina, Brother Frank Duncan, the mission pastor, he came, we were good friends for many years, and he brought a group of like maybe 10 people. And so after a few days of them kind of doing the secular, reformed, kind of conservative Jew experience in Manhattan and those areas, he said, Brother Jeff, I'm ready for the ultra-Orthodox experience. I said, Brother Frank, you know not what you asked. He goes, no, I'm ready for it. I said, okay, you asked for it. And there's a brother named Doug Kyle with the Ministry of Chosen People. I said, will you take them to the edge of the ultra-Orthodox area? We set up a book table and various things and give them the ultra-Orthodox experience. So a little later that morning, I get a call. Brother Jeff, the place is up for grabs. The police are here. Little old ladies are going on the rooftops and baptizing us in laundry detergent. We're being persecuted. The police are here. I said, okay, Brother Frank, it's maybe time to close up shop. And a little later in the day, we'll kind of do a little downtime and discuss the ultra-Orthodox experience. So they actually enjoyed it. And so we had a Korean guy who was with them too. Brother, he said, Brother Jeff, I think someday I martyred for Jesus. I said, Brother Brian, I said, you just got baptized in laundry detergent. Give it a rest. But so Brother Frank said, Jeff, I really thought this whole experience was pretty cool. He said, I think we're ready to go to Israel now. So, but what I've learned living in New York, ministries like Jews for Jesus, you might have heard of them, Chosen People, which I am still part of their staff, but I'm also the founder of a sports ministry called Global Baseball or Global Sports Federation Incorporated. I started that long before I was part of the staff for Chosen People. And we had 8 incredible years with beginning the ministry with 501c3, the door open to me. We started with 4 house churches and a handful of kids. And the pastor there said, Jeff, baseball is the king of our nation. He said, will you bring teams where you could play in tournaments? Will you bring humanitarian aid? We have 4 house churches now. He said, through the king, we would like you to introduce our people to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. To men and kids, he said, Jeff, the men of our country do not respect Catholicism. They do not respect the priests. And Fidel in the Revolution drove all the Catholic priests out anyway. And he said, you have to understand in our culture, for men to try to take advice from a man who's never been married. He said, I'm just telling you in our country the way it is. But he said, you bring ex-professional Christian players who have normal lives with kids and marriages. He said, they'll listen to you. Well, we went on this trip, and this was in 2001. I started the 501c3 Global Baseball. I brought Marty Clary, which would be Atlanta Braves. Jose Alvarez, our number 1 pitcher from the University of Illinois, Bob Harrell. His daughter ended up becoming Miss America. Bob had an incredible conversion experience our senior year. And so Pastor Eduardo started his first 4 house churches in a town called Alomar, which is 15 to 20 minutes east of Havana. And so he put us in a tournament. I had Marty Clary pitching that day. He was still throwing in the 90s, and he was done with his career. And we were beating them 6-4 going into the last inning. And they ended up winning 7-6. A famous former national team player came to bat named Raul Valdez. So it's probably a good thing that we didn't win, but we got their attention. They really respected us. And so Raul, we had a meeting in church. And so my friend Bob Harrell, who was on, I pitched. I said, Bob, why don't you share your testimony tonight? And guess who gave his life to Jesus? Raul. And we had interpreters. And a couple days later, his whole team called Alomar, which was supposed, this Alomar city was to become a model communist city. And then in the 90s, that's when the whole economy imploded because of the fall of the communist bloc. And within days, the Holy Spirit came in to start filling that vacuum. God used a wicked king to bring good, because he leveled the playing field of religion, but what he couldn't stop was the true Christian movement. And so all of a sudden, 75% of their economy was gone. People were missing a whole lot of meals, including Eduardo, in the early 90s, and communist officials were asking Christian pastors to come to their houses and to pray with them to accept Christ. That was the birth of the house church movement. Now it's 2001. So Team Alomar shows up at Raul's house. They're all playing Nintendo because we brought them a brand new Nintendo, a little TV, and it's like new kid on the block kind of thing. And his team shows up, but Raul's all dressed up. Raul, where are you going? I'm going to the Iglesia tonight. Why? These gringos are kind of cool. And Clary, the big guy who threw in the 90s from the Grande Leagues, the major leagues, he's going to tell his story, and I want to hear it. Well, Raul, if you're going, we're going to. The whole team, this all-star team, came with them. And that night, the whole team gave their life to Jesus. So, by the end of the trip, we went down to the ocean with this team and other people. We did home visits, humanitarian aid, vacation Bible school, all different kinds of things. And we probably baptized over 100 people in the year 2001. We went from 4 house churches to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, and then with a church, kind of like yours, about the year 2002 in the fall, Raul said, I'm doing something special for your group tonight. It's kind of those out-of-season experiences. I'm going to bring you to Latin American Stadium, where I used to play with a team called the Metros. He said, a team that's like the New York Yankees of Cuba called the Industriales is playing my team tonight, and I'm bringing you all to this game. At that game, 45 to 55,000 people just going nuts. You could barely hear it, and then all of a sudden, Raul screams up to the grandstand where we were sitting, Jeff, vamos, vamos. He calls me down and back of home plate and introduces me to Fidel Castro's second youngest son, who was his personal doctor. And he was the team physician for their baseball Olympic team, vice president of baseball. Have you heard how America and Cuba has come to terms and that the Cubans don't have to defect anymore and they're just starting it this year? Guess who put all that in place? Fidel's son. Well, Raul introduces me to Antonio Castro, and he says, Antonio, Jeff has some things to share with you about baseball and medical. And Tony, who spoke pretty good English, said, Jeff, I want you to come to my office tomorrow, and I want to talk to you about these things. And I'm saying, how did this happen? Well, so I met with him, and I said, Tony, let's show the whole world. I says, no political person. I'm not a political person. I said, let's show the whole world how Cubans and Americans can really get along, and what, this between the two countries, that's at a political level. We're not political guys. I said, we like baseball. I said, I kind of come out of healthcare with a company called ServiceMaster. Let me bring doctors. I'll bring orthopedic surgeons, I'll bring rehab people, and let's, through medical and sports, let's use these platforms to show the whole world how well we can get along. A half year later, I come, and somebody donated Major League Cleveland Indian uniforms to us. So we called ourselves the Gold Indians. And we showed up at this baseball stadium that I had the privilege of leading her director to the war. So he let us use the stadium. But Tony showed up with the commissioner of baseball for the whole nation. He was a Chinese Cuban named Ruben Chu. We ended up leading him. Now Ruben says, can I play on your team? I said, sure, Ruben, because he played for the Industriales years earlier, shortstop. I said, we could use a shortstop. But who else shows up to our team practice? And we're wearing these tops for our practice. Tony Castro, with his bodyguard and his driver. And we're all hugging on him, doing introductions. And Tony said, Jeff, I like those uniforms. He says, I want one. He says, you can't have one. He said, why? I says, you're going to play on a Cuban team. I says, you're a traitor. He says, no, I don't. Are you going to tell Castro so he's not playing? Are you going to tell him he's batting last and playing right field? So he played on our team. He's a chip off the old block. Great guy. And he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he was getting other doctors to take over his surgeries for him. Because he could have played Major League Baseball in Cuba, but instead he went into medical. And then, because he's the team physician for the Olympic team, he circled back on baseball that way, and he loves playing. Just really a good guy. After playing a doubleheader, the Tony's on our team, I think he played first base and batted sixth or something like that. I said to a couple of our guys, share his testimonies. At that time, we didn't have religious visas to be able to go. And the police were flipping out, because you're not supposed to do that in a big stadium. But I said to myself, what was I created for? I was created to share the gospel. And there's time not to take risks, but there is time to take risks. And I said, this is what I was born for. And if I don't make my move in the league, that God can protect me. But even if it did, what's the worst? They could throw me in jail, kick me out of the country. I said, this is in front of Castro's son. I got to go for it. I let them share the gospel. But as I was standing there, years earlier, I was talking with this gentleman about going to Europe, whatever. I had been to Greece. And I did a little devotion on Mars Hill. And I remembered that whole thing Paul said in the scripture to an unknown God. He didn't preach the gospel to the Greeks like he did the Jews. If he would do it with the Jews, it would be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We did a whole history lesson of how it led up the genealogy of Jesus, right? This wasn't about that. He said, I see that you're kind of religious people, and there's this inscription to an unknown God. And as I was standing before the crowd, it was like the Holy Spirit was exploding in me. Give him the Pauline Marshall message. And I looked at the crowd, and after they shared their testimony, I said, as I stand before you, my heart bears me witness that you know that there is a God. Today I'm going to tell you who he is. When I was done speaking, I said, all heads bowed. 11 people gave their life to Jesus, and one of those people was Tony Castro. Tony went to his father's people, and he told them, leave Jeff Siegel. Now, when God called me to full-time faith-based ministry, to lead the service ministry, I came home for lunch one day, and the Lord says, when you're done eating, get on your knees in front of the couch, I want to talk to you. And the Lord said to me, don't you see the writing on the wall? I said, Lord, I see the writing. I just don't see the provision. He said, if you want to see the provision, you got to get out of the boat. Remember the story where Peter gets out of the boat and goes water walking with Jesus? And I thought, God, are you calling me like to start my own 501c3, faith-based? He said, yes. He said, you could stay in the business world if you want, and I'll bless you there. But if you want to be in the very center of my world and be where the action is, he said, get out of the way. And I thought, God, how do we do this? He said, you're going to have to stay very close to me. You're going to have to ask me for wisdom after you do that. That was 19 years ago. And God said to me, don't worry about being financially provided for. How are you going to take care of your family? He said, if you take care of my business, I'll take care of yours. I said, Matt, what's your business? He said, you're doing yours. I'm going to send you all around the world with a platform of sports. Sports will get you into places. And he said, and Jeff, don't aim for older people. Aim for younger people. He says, I don't want you to miss a generation. Because if you get the kids, you get the parents too. But if you get the parents, you won't necessarily get the kids. And in places like Israel and Cuba and the Dominican Republic, and I can name other places up for tonight. I just want to zero in on Cuba and Israel. We've gone from 4 house churches to 110 house churches. We've had the privilege to buy $250,000 in property in Cuba. In 2010, the Cuban government granted us religious visas. After we started this ministry, we were also open to Israel. Whoever thought that my cousin, who went to college with me at the same time, would make Aliyah to Israel, would move to Israel, and still love baseball. He was a Sox fan. I was a Cubs fan. He was from downstate. He would become a national baseball team coach for Israel. And through my cousin, who was an Orthodox Jew, I was more of like a conservative Reform Jew, he invited me to come and to do programs and to work with the Israel national teams, actually beginning before we started the nonprofit in the year 1999. So, but what I've realized is I've had this stopover with Chosen People Ministries for a season, 11 years. I got a Master of Divinity degree with an emphasis on Jewish studies, 4 units of Hebrew. I went to Hebrew school as a kid. It was nice to brush up and to go a little farther and to be able to examine the scriptures in Hebrew. But then I had to, through this Master of Divinity, also do 5 units of Greek. Now, Greek is a very mathematical language. I call it formulaic. You know, it's killed me. But I am alive to tell the story that God is real. People prayed me through. And then I went out to receive my doctoral degree. To be able to do it, even you have to have the end, so God's reading our goals. But I am more called to the world. Peter and James, in the Bible, they were called to more Jewish people exclusively. But Paul was, it says, he's not ashamed of the gospel. It's the power of God unto the Jew first, but then to the nations. Paul went to the nations. What was cool about Paul, and I use the term the diaspora, where all the Jewish people were scattered. He got into the synagogues all over the world, but he was also planting churches. And that's more mine. So in January, I'm stepping down from the payroll of Chosen People because I've had a beautiful talk with Dr. Mitch Glazer, and I says, Mitch, God is calling me 100% back. I never left old baseball, but this was this unique period of my life where through Dr. Glazer and Messianic Jews, I was sharpened. You might say, but what do you mean sharpened, Jeff? You're Jewish already. I'm telling you, our people group is so diverse that if you have a chance, there's a movie called The Chosen by Chaim Kotak, and it's really unique to show you the difference between the ultra-Orthodox mindset versus conservative. It's really a cool historical movie. And that's what was happening in my life, learning about my own people to be a more effective minister of the gospel as I traveled the world and in the diaspora. There was a time years ago I spoke in the largest Messianic congregation in the world in Kiev, Ukraine, where my mother's husband was from Kiev. We'll call them like Russian Jews. A certain kind of mentality. That was an area because of communism and Nazism that the Jews were kind of wiped out of religion. And then after the wars and after those time periods and when the Iron Curtain fell, a whole lot of Jews were coming for Jesus in pure form, not forced, but because God was visiting them in those places. I had the opportunity to share my testimony years ago in kind of a college and careers meeting through that Messianic congregation. Up to a couple hundred of those young people who were Jewish who were loved Jesus. It blew my mind. America's one mentality. Israel, believe it or not, I think Jewish people in Israel now are softer than American Jews. It's a different mentality. So I had to learn all these different contexts, and I was talking to Brother Tom today. When I finished my doctoral degree, the head of the program said, if there's any one thing that you would say was most important to you for this program, what was it? And I said, oh, contextualization. You walk into different churches, you walk into different countries, you kind of got to have a sense. We can't walk in and say, here's what I'd have to offer you. It's more like, what can I do to help? And be very respectful. So it's also true among the Jewish people that in my own culture, I'm an American Jew, I was born in Chicago. Now I've kind of pushed, thank God I was born in Chicago because New York wasn't as daunting, in that kind of situation. And so having experience with Chicago and now New York is a springboard. But my passion, so since I played college baseball, and I'm just a sports guy, and I love baseball, and I love basketball, and I love all sports, I'll just share this aspect. When I gave my life to Jesus, my dad kicked me out of the family because he accused me of not being Jewish. Who would ever imagine that God would use my baseball background to open the door into Israel before my dad gave his life to Jesus 26 years later? And rather than my Israeli brothers responding so hardcore because I had this gift of sports, it normalized me in their eyes. And by the time it came around that I shared with them I was a Messianic Jew, well, if he pitched for U of I, and he's coming and do these programs, and he's not stealing the souls of our children, Siegel can't be too bad of a guy. But I still have to watch my P's and Q's because in every culture there's people who are more fanatical, and you just have to be careful there, and that's where I have to be careful within my own culture. So I gave a little overview of how the sports ministry also led me, like Paul, to come out of the Gentile nations for a stopover. The Bible says Paul came to Jerusalem, remember? Among the apostles, and privately, he had his opportunity to share here what he was doing among the Gentiles. It said that they offered him the right of the fellowship, and then they blessed him and sent him on his way. I think that's what my 11-year experience with chosen people. Come January, I'm going to be blessed and sent on my way. But we're going to do projects together. But for me to really do what I need to do, there's a coach named Joe Torre, remember? Yankee coach? When he was coaching with certain teams, maybe St. Louis or others, he was a pretty good coach. But when he was with the Yankees, he came to his own. Michael Jackson, this is a bad analogy. When he was with the Jackson 5, Jackson 5's good. But he had to come out because there was something more for him. That's kind of my situation. It's nothing negative. It's just the next steps. And under the covering, last point, of the sports ministry, we've developed something called DBAs, or doing business now. So sports gets a say. But remember, in a place like Cuba, their medical system is actually pretty good, except for one thing. Their doctors can prescribe glasses, but sometimes you can't even find their glasses in the country. They'll prescribe a certain thing, and you need a certain medicine, but you can't get the medicine in the country. So we have developed a DBA called Double Play Medical and Dental. And we've engaged doctors all over the country. So when we go to Cuba, we'll do medical projects. Well, in Cuba, sometimes we have to send items from Canada because there's an embargo between the two countries. And it's not illegal because I have full permission of the State Department, OFAC, and full permission of their government to come and help to do things. But sometimes getting stuff there isn't so easy. We have a gentleman who's an Air Force pilot, and he flies with Southwest Airlines. He leads our aviation industry. We call that land, sea, and air, because sometimes we'll send a container ship from Canada. We call that one triple play transportation. Go with the baseball analogies. That's not my fault. My board also has a very good sense of humor. So we have, and then in January 2020, in the fall of this year, we're going to develop a very nice website for Jewish ministry, because there's people who want to support me through Jewish ministry, that when I leave chosen people, the payroll, Dr. Glazer said, you can have the donors, but they'll expect those donors will want to see me being Jewish, which I will do, just in a Pauline kind of model. So we're going to develop a ministry that we already have an DBA called Burning Bush Ministries. And when you hear my testimony on Sunday, I have sometimes called that my Burning Bush experience, you can have one too. So I like to think Burning Bush Ministries is a Jewish ministry. So August 12 through 20, I'm inviting you all to Cuba. The kinds of things that we do, the most important, so we've gone from 40 house churches to 110 and thousands of lives, especially in the Nevada area. We have 80 house churches there and about another 30 all the way east by Guantanamo, Baracoa, where Pastor Eduardo was born and raised. And so we're getting ready to do some things, go through Nevada and go east and plant more churches. But I was explaining to Brother Tom, a lot of people are getting saved in their apartments and their homes and saying, hey, you can have a house church. There's the problem. They don't know how to lead church. So that's where we need pastors to come. And we do leadership pastoral training, where we do theology, doctrine, spiritual formation, teach them how to evangelize their people. Obviously, we're not going to take any nation for Christ. They're going to take their own nation. But we've got to give them the tools. As we speak, a lot of what you've heard about Cuba, yeah, the history of communism, some of that's true. But what a lot of Americans, even in church, don't know, there is a move of the Holy Spirit. They are in revival as we speak. We've never seen anything like it in your life. And it's one of the safest places. That government doesn't want to hurt Americans, do harm, it's safe, and we have our own ministry center where we can house up to 100 people with delicious meals, full air conditioning, hot showers, and the funds that we would have given to the Cuban government for the broken down hotels. We are creating a sustainable model where the money that we give to the church, they hire cooks, they are able to pay their pastors, their interpreters, their security people, and so now we are hoping them that at another time, when eventually we pull out, they'll be able to move forward and have a sustainable model. So I'm inviting you all. We can do vacation Bible school, we can do medical, we can do light construction, all different gifts and talents. I'm not saying that you're all going, but you're all invited. August 12, the cost is $19.80 for those locations. And then in September 17 through 27, we're going to do a tour of Israel. Our starting point is the greater New York area that I told Brother Tom and others who I talked with a little bit. If I have enough people from the churches in the Sioux Falls area, let's say we have another 10 to 20 from these areas, including New York, what my tendency would be to do is to see if at a similar cost I can fly you from this area all the way to Israel, that you get in, let's say, an hour to 2 hours before us. And rather than have to get a separate plane ticket all the way to New York, unload your bags, go to, you see what I mean? So I have 2 itineraries. So after we're done, after I do the Seder with you, dessert, here's the brochure for Israel, here's the brochure for Cuba, you're all invited. And so that's an overview of the ministry, and we're going to have dessert now, and then we'll go right into the Passover. At the end of the night, I'll be in back of this little area. If you have questions about any of the trips, for our newsletters of some of those trips, and that's it. Okay. So, dessert time. So we were thinking, well, should I go to the mic? But the mic I goes. So if I get a little soft when I kind of get laid back and talking that way, just raise your hand. I'll know immediately I just need to speak louder. Okay? And then I may ask at some point, am I loud enough or whatever, because I get lost in my speaking and you can't hear me, just do this and I know immediately what I need to do. Okay? Few people ask me about my wife Terry and a little bit about my family. I'll talk about my kids first and then Terry. So I have a daughter. This month going to be 38 years old. She lives in a city called Maastricht, Holland, on the border of Düsseldorf, Germany, and Brussels, Belgium. A very, very beautiful area, right next to Belgium, and some you can hop on the train and get to Paris in 3 hours, and most of Europe in a couple hours. A very beautiful area. She's a professor in public policy and works for the University of muster. Then I have 2 boys at Camp Pendleton. Our oldest son, Joseph, is a doctor in the United States Navy. And our baby boy, and I'm going to ask you for special prayers, our son Ben, who we have 2 grandchildren through Ben and Yulia. Ben married a Romanian woman. My grandpa was actually Romanian Jew, so you can imagine her parents are very happy to have son-in-law with Romanian blood. Then, about a week ago, Ben came from the Middle East, doing some intelligence kind of things. I can't tell you exactly what it was, but he came from the Middle East. He had like a 7-hour layover. He came through JFK. I went to pick him up. We had breakfast together. He told me where he was up to, and but he told me something really cool. So in July, he's going to be deployed to the Middle East for 9 months. So remember my son in your prayers, because you go over into those places. They're not, even though he's off the front lines of things, it's still a crazy area. So until you see your son come home again, your heart, sometimes you hear if there's problems in those areas, your heart skips a beat. Years ago, he went to Afghanistan for a year, and he was in a place called the Helmut province, and there was some real problems there. And so I caught Carrie crying. She was getting out of the shower and crying. I said, "Honey, is it about that?" She said, "Yeah." So I had to pray her through some of those times. But so he's going to go to the Middle East in July, 9 months. But he told me something cool. And my friend Brian Boyle, sometimes when there's a special moment, he says, "You're giving me chicken skin," like goosebumps. So my son gave me a chicken skin moment. And I said, "There's an opportunity after my deployment." He said that a job through the Marines at the highest level of security, he said the doors open to me to serve in Israel at the United States Embassy in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And he said, and part of my responsibilities and part of my training is they would send me to school to learn Hebrew. And he wouldn't, this wouldn't be a deployment, this would be a new duty station. And he would get to take his wife and his 2 kids. And I never asked my kids to do this, but they named their daughter Ariella, which is a Hebrew name. And our little boy, so our granddaughter is about 2.5 years old, the grandson's a half-year-old, and they named him Ethan, but in Hebrew, Ethan. And I'm thinking, is this all coincidence? And I said, "Son, I usually don't tell you how to do your business. I fully trust you. You make good decisions. But I said, on this one, I said, I highly encourage you, because when it has to do with the intelligence community to serve in Israel at the U.S. Embassy, what an incredible opportunity. And you being a Jewish Christian, for you to learn Hebrew at our government's expense, and then eventually when you would come back, you would have an experience when you get your 20 years in or whatever, you would have the highest level of security clearance, this kind of thing. But if you remember to pray for them, and I can't say that I know, but I feel, although I told you I'm called to the Gentile nations, including the Jewish people, I still feel that when we share the Messiah Passover with Italian, I feel that down the road, we're in the time of the Gentiles, right? But we're seeing more and more Jewish people starting to get saved. Every time you turn on the news, what's going on with Israel, right? Iran, Russia, Syria, it's Bible prophecies lining up. And I feel that I'm on a collision course for the future to spend more time in Israel. And then when Ben told me that, it was like, chicken skin. So just pray about that. I don't want to pretend I know anything, but we'll see what God does with it. I just said, "Oh, Ben." And I was curious. I said, "How do you feel about it?" He said, "I don't really want to do it." But it, obviously, his wife has to feel comfortable with it too. But the fact that when officers get deployed, obviously they do have some say and some choice in their career. What he's going to do now is a whole lot, for 9 months, a whole lot more dangerous than to be insecurity at the U.S. Embassy, although you hear at times from the Gaza Strip, they're throwing bombs now into Tel Aviv. So it's not like, but I truly believe that my son has a destiny. And again, if he'll take care of God's business, even through the United States military, God will take care of things. So like I said, your heart skips a beat at times, but we have to give our gifts to the Lord. It's not so easy. So my wife, my beautiful wife, Carrie, she's Swedish, and well, together we made some nice kids. And the beauty of the two cultures, just so cool. And normally, a lot of times she does come with me, and I called Terry today, and when I say this, I mean it with great love. I said, Terry, you're not going to believe I'm in South Dakota, and everyone's in Olson, Johnson, and I said, honey, they even eat Lutheran. I know. Yeah, Lutheran. Fish fat from the dead. Hey, I'm not that crazy about it either. But when I'm with her family, I'm nice. Would you like another heaping? So I don't want to keep it from the other people. You know what I'm talking about, right? But I said, hey, these people are cool. And Jewish people are kind of like Hispanics in the sense we're very family-oriented, but we're kind of an affectionate people group, and like Italians, we talk with our hands, and we're a storytelling community. Well, when I say this, forgive me. So Jewish people are storytellers. We can tend to be a bit long-winded, right? But your Swedes and your Norwegians, how you doing? Fine. You know, glad to meet you. So Carrie explained in her culture, now you help me with this, I hope you don't mind me doing this, but there's something called lagom, and it has to do with, when I see a Swedish car like a Volvo or whatever, they do everything great, but it's more like one big team. The culture is just a whole lot different. But I said, anyways, I'm out here with Carlsons and Johnsons and Olsons, and everybody's the son of somebody, but they say it's not just a Swedish deal, it's a Norwegian deal. I said, so when you asked me if your wife ever travel with you, my dream would be, if you like this, to come back and do the fall festivals in the fall right here with me. Because Terry would really like you guys. She'd think, wow, these guys are really cool. I can hang out, and you're doing your thing, and I'll go out with the ladies, and we'll talk about Norwegian stuff, and we can talk about Swedish prayers and lutefisk, and you know, whatever you want. So when Carrie comes with me, what I'm about to do, she would do it, but I'll do it for her. So I'm going to say a bracha. Bracha in Hebrew means prayer over the candles, and that's how we start the Passover. And I'm going to do it in Hebrew, and then I'll do it. Pastor Tom will interpret it. I'll do it in Hebrew and English, and then I'm going to. So a normal Passover Seder, which includes the meal and everything, you're talking a 3-hour gig with family. Tonight it's going to be short and sweet because I'm going to give you an overview on the diagram together. And this is called a Haggadah. It's like a special book to lead a Seder service. And so I'm going to just touch on 5 points. I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I like doing with Passover is I like the Word of God. Exodus 12 and then Luke 22, and we'll have it. So I'm going to do the prayer over the candle now. Terry will do it. She does a great job. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu al yedei emunah b'Yeshua HaMashiach or olam u'bishmo anu madlikim haner shel Pesach. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us through faith in Jesus, the Messiah, the light of the world, and in His name we kindle the Passover lights. Can everybody hear me? Okay? Okay, good. And I spoke loud enough, you can repeat the prayer in Hebrew? Yes. We got it. So, open open up your Bibles if you have, or your cell phones. Don't get on the internet though. To Exodus chapter 12, verse 1. That will be our start.
Should I grab some Bibles?
Yeah, that would be great, because I think you'll enjoy. But I'm going to start while they're reading Bibles, and I'll move along, because what I'm going to share this week, this is very familiar to the majority of you, but by the time all the Bibles are out, I want to be respectful. It says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be the beginning of the months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, On the 10th of this month, every man shall take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house, taking according to the number of persons according to each man's need, you shall take the count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You may take it from the sheep or the goats. Now you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it at twilight. And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel of the houses where they eat it. Then they shall keep the flesh on that night, roasted in fire, with unleavened bread and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. So remember that part. You have unleavened bread close to you, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat it raw or boiled it all with water, but roast it in fire, its head, its legs, and its entrails. You shall let none of it remain until morning, but whatever remains until morning you shall burn with fire. And thus you shall eat it, with the belt on your waist, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand. So you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt, and I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. Now the blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be on you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. So this day shall be a memorial, and you shall keep it as a feast of the Lord through your generations. You shall keep it as a feast by an everlasting ordinance." So Jewish months are different because they are on a lunar calendar. So every couple of years they have to add an additional month. So it says on the first month of the year, on the 10th day, the fathers of the family go with their kids like to a farm in South Dakota. And they get what? A lamb. How old? 1 year. Okay? And the father of the family, he discards one of the lambs. Why does he do this? Out of all those people, they discarded a few. Because Moses said this lamb has to meet a certain requirement. What was that requirement? You got it. Okay? And a male. Perfect. Okay. You're a good Berean. You're really paying attention. So, when we go to Israel, you get one very juice and everything. Okay. So, let me back up now. What I'm talking about here, the Jewish people were in Egypt. God sent Moses to them, and there were already 9 plagues against the Egyptian gods. God, who's God Almighty, we know through one plague he could have brought the Jewish people out. But there's a reason why he did 10 plagues. And the reason, you remember God said to Abraham, I'm going to give this land to you as a possession. That's the land of Israel. But during the time of Joseph, the Jewish people were not ready. They were a dysfunctional family. They were not ready to manage the land of Canaan or Israel. And so God sent them to follow Joseph into Egypt under the guardianship of Pharaoh. And they gave him a good piece of land. Might have looked like Illinois or South Dakota, real nice black soil, corn, soybeans, this kind of thing, dairy. Real good farmland in a place called Goshen. Now they're there 400 years, and I think, so if you read past these chapters, It says 600,000 foot soldiers came out when they took the census, when they went into the wilderness. But so they were men 20 years and older. So a lot of those men in their 20s in those days, they got married. They got married younger. Were they all married? No. But if you could kind of multiply that by 4 to 6, they had bigger families in those days. Anywhere from 1.5 to maybe 2.5 million Jewish people. They went in 70 to 75 and came out pretty big. So that's a whole lot of lambs. But I believe that this people group, who God was teaching how to be a nation, and the most sophisticated nation in the world, right? Egypt was like, what, the United States of their day, or whatever you want to call it, the Europe of the day. Pretty good place to learn how to be a nation, except they worshiped all these other gods. So God, who not only loved the Jewish people, he loved all human beings. He was coming against the gods of Egypt. And so, and how did this happen? Moses would go to the Pharaoh and say, hey, let my people go, let us go to the wilderness and worship. Pharaoh was all excited about this request, right? He granted everything. No. Moses got Pharaoh upset. The Bible says he first hardened his own heart, but then God hardened it. Why? Because God was coming against the gods of Egypt to show all human beings there is only one God. So, after all of this, and instead of Pharaoh being excited, he basically said to Moses, I'm going to paraphrase, you've really upset me. I was providing bricks so that your people could make my cities for me, but now I'm not even going to provide that for you. You go get your own straw, you get your own mortar, make the bricks, but the cities you're building, that program has to continue. Well, now God's getting ready to just last plague the Jewish people out, an example of the plagues. So one of the gods of Egypt would be the sun god. Can everybody hear me? Anybody not hearing me? Okay, we're doing okay. One of the gods was the sun god. God struck the sun god. What happened in Egypt that day, it was pitch black. I mean, you could cut it with a knife. You couldn't see anything. But in Goshen, what was going on? It was bright. God was making a distinction. So now it's going to be Passover. God says, take this lamb 1 year old without spot or blemish. And on the 10th day of the first month, bring this lamb. They didn't keep it outside. They brought it into their houses, my opinion. And what happens with the lamb with your kids after 4 days living in your house? I see some people say, that lamb wouldn't be living in my house. What happens with the kids, though? They kind of get attached to that lamb. But what happened on the 14th? What did the Bible say in Exodus? What was to happen on the 14th and 12th? You got it. How many here have done any hunting? Okay. Now I don't know what it's like to dress an animal in the field, but I would imagine whether you paint it up, however you get the blood out, you got to get the blood out, right? Now, I don't know how you do that with the deer in the field, or you bring it home and hang it up, I don't know. But the bottom line is at some point you have to turn that thing upside down and get all the blood out. So that blood was going into this like big bowl or something like that. And they took this substance. If you should go with me to Israel, we're going to actually go, we're going to be in Jerusalem 3 days. And we're going to travel from there through Masada, Qumran, and Gedi area, keep going all the way down to the Red Sea. And then you see more desert-like area. And in the desert, there's like these bush-like, mini tree-like things. And if you cut the branches off, it's kind of spongy and it's all this. So Moses said, take the hyssop and dip it in that bowl of blood. You can see like the door over there. Now imagine we're inside the house on Passover, but it's facing from the outside. So from the outside, they put, what did they put on the doorpost and the lintel? The blood of lamb, spotless, 1 year old, male, etc. Okay? So now, it's the final plague. Jews are getting ready to come out of Egypt. But they're all in the house. They're eating grilled lamb kind of thing, and maybe another family's in with them because maybe their family's small. Everyone's in the house, they're not going out. And God is coming over the land. He's going over the Egyptians' houses, and he's going over the Jewish houses. And God says that he's going to kill all the firstborn of Egypt. And he would have even done it to the Jewish people, except when God came over, what did he see? The blood. So, in a sense, he was in between the death destroyer and the Jewish people. And because God saw the blood, the Jewish people, and those people in that house, they were saved. So here's my question. How many Jewish people that night perished? How many firstborn of the Jewish people perished? Now remember, I told you there were about 1.5, kind of a guesstimate, 1.5 to maybe 2.5 million Jews. Now, I am of the opinion that there were some Egyptians in those houses who partook of the lamb because they saw their God struck, and they saw this God of the Jews is the only true God. We want to worship him, and we want to celebrate, and we also want to believe him. And so, how many Jewish people, firstborn, were lost of the Jewish people? Can anybody tell me? Nobody? Who said nobody? So you're telling me that this God of the Jews is such an attention to detail God that he can, he sees everything, but he saw the blood, and that one Jewish person perished in it.
Right. Unless they can put it up.
Well, the Bible doesn't say anybody perished. It's one time in our history that we got it right. And so the book of Romans says, if you confess with your mouth and you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and God raised him from the dead, you will be what? You will be saved. When we leave this shoebox, this house that we call a body, and the death destroyer comes to claim this guy right here. But God comes too. And he sees something in his life. When he was 5 years old, he gave his life to Jesus. And something was applied in his heart and mind. And God says, you can't touch that guy. Why? Because of what? The blood of the Lamb. Remember what John said, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. So you're saying that because of Jesus' shed blood, that he can't be touched. That this guy really believed, he made a true confession of faith, and it's by faith through grace, by grace through faith that we're saved. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
That the same attention to detail of God in Egypt is going to be the same attention to detail of God, and we can take our salvation to the bank because God doesn't lie. Is that what you're telling me? You guys are absolutely right. And see, years ago, I was doing Messiah and Passover, where we would sit down meal were just like this. And I was traveling from Montana to Wyoming. Now, it was unbelievable. I was by myself, a special moment. I felt like I was in cowboy country, and it looked like somebody etched one of those John Wayne movie sets everywhere I was going. And I was just expecting him to come around the corner on a horse any moment. And the little Jewish kid from Chicago, I grew up with Roy Rogers, I don't know about you guys. And all of a sudden I'm driving, being goofy, singing, Happy Trails until we meet again. You see? You grew up with it too. So I'm not so crazy. I grew up with 2 brothers, and we grew up in Chicago, and we had a bedroom with 3 beds together, and my brother Rick was a real character. Sometimes we would hear him doing, the Gene Autry. He would have cowboys and Indians in his room, and I would hear him shooting and hitting himself, and that's the days we grew up in. So my point on this is I was seeing this amazing picture. I didn't have to see it, but I was glad that I was seeing it. I was glad that I partook of something that is obvious to me that only God could make something so beautiful. Brothers and sisters, God loved us so much that the Jewish festivals in the Old Testament, you don't have to read the Old Testament. You don't have to do any of this to be saved. But it paints a picture. God loved the Jewish people. He loved all human beings. That he took time through all these genealogies and all these things in the Old Covenant. And he said that there would be a better covenant. But before we could understand the better covenant, he established a covenant. There was still blood sacrifice in the temple and all these things, but when Jesus came, behold, the Lamb of God. This is what Passover is all about. And when I was growing up, and we'll touch on that in a few minutes, I had eyes to see, but I couldn't see. I had ears to hear. But when I came to faith, it was like everything illuminated. And when I went to Hebrew school as a little boy, I didn't see these things. But then when God came after me, he opened my eyes, and that's how I got saved. So my salvation wasn't on any goodness that I had, but like Abraham believed God, and it was his righteousness, not mine. So let's continue. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first until the seventh, that person shall be cut off from Israel. So this is an example of the unleavened bread of Egypt, because remember, they were leaving in haste. They didn't have time to put leaven. What does leaven do to bread? It makes it rise. So they said, no, you're going to have unleavened bread, and you're going to travel with this and eat this. And it says, for 7 days you shall keep this, you shall do it as an everlasting ordinance. Verse 17, so you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this same day I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day through your generations as an everlasting ordinance. And the first month on the 14th day, so on the 14th day is the sacrifice, but it also begins the feast of unleavened bread. No leaven shall be in your house. If there is, that person will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he's a stranger or native to the land. You shall eat nothing leavened in all your dwellings, and you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for the elders of the people and said to them, pick up your lambs, take it according to your families, and kill the Passover lamb. Verse 24, you shall do this as an everlasting ordinance for you and your sons forever. Verse 29, and it came to pass at midnight that the Lord struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, for the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, for the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, all the firstborn of livestock. So Pharaoh rose in the night, he and all the servants of the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, and there was not a house where there was not one dead. Okay, the distinction between those who were covered by the blood and those who weren't. Now we're going to transition from that Passover to a very unique Last Supper, or Jesus' last Passover Seder. We're going to transition into Luke chapter 22, verse 7. It says, then came the day of unleavened bread when the Passover must be killed. And he sent Peter and John, saying, go and prepare the Passover for us, that we might eat. And they said to him, where do you want us to prepare? And he said to them, behold, when you've entered the city, a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house which he enters. Then you shall say to the master of the house, the teacher says, where is the guest room where I eat the Passover with my disciples? Then he will show you a large furnished upper room there made ready. And they found it just as he said to them, and they prepared the Passover. How many people here who are listening to this have ever been to Israel? If you have, just raise your hand. Have you been to the upper room? No. Okay, that's why you need to go back. What's really cool about going to Israel, and a lot has improved since you were there, very, very beautiful, a lot of ruins have been restored, is I've been in that upper room now, whether it happened at that level or somewhere close by. In Israel, and those kind of cultures like Greece, Italy, a lot of things are destroyed and they keep building on ruins. But when you go to Israel and you go to the places where Jesus was, the prophets were, it's like this Bible absolutely comes to life. It's like you're reading the Bible on steroids as I'm speaking to you. I can imagine Jesus sitting with his disciples, perhaps in this room. And there's a whole lot of other places in Israel that are like that. I just recommend that believers go once in their life to Israel. It will be life-changing. And then when you read your Bible, it's not that reading the Bible wasn't great before. It's just you envision yourself there and imagining what it would have been like Like, for example, Elijah and the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. We will visit Mount Carmel, aren't we? To be at the very place that Elijah was in those prophets. Verse 14, it said, when the hour had come, he sat down with the 12 apostles with them. And he said to them, with fervent desire, I desire to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I say to you, I will no longer eat of it until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. Then he took the cup, and he gave thanks and said, take it and divide it among yourselves. For I say to you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. Key juncture in the Passover Seder. So I'm going to start combining things. There are 4 cups of grape juice. During a Passover Seder meal, we have 1 cup, but we partake of it 4 times. So for a graphic, it's a lot easier for me to do it this way. It says, he took the cup. This is the first cup. There's 4 cups during the Passover Seder meal. The first cup is called the cup of sanctification, which means I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. The second one during the course of the meal is called the cup of judgment, or I will rid you of their bondage, which really neat when we get to that point, over a longer dinner. We take our finger, we put it into the cup. We take, and on our plate, we take 10 beads of grape juice, and we recite the judgments that God put on the Egyptians, but we also do it in Hebrew, which is kind of fun. Then the third cup, which to me is my favorite, and our favorite, and most important, it's called the cup of redemption. This is where Jesus instituted communion over this cup, and in a couple minutes I'll bring that together. And then the fourth, when the Seder meal is over, it's a time of praise. They'll sing some psalms, some worshipy kind of music, and then say goodbye to everybody. So on the first cup, Jesus may have done something like this. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the fruit of the vine. So, if all of you will pour yourself a little grape juice, maybe it's already poured in your cups, we're going to partake together of the first cup, or the cup of sanctification. While you're doing that, and everybody is taking a sip, now, right before the full meal, this is called the Passover Seder plate. On the plate, we have parsley. If you will each grab a sprig of parsley, in Hebrew, this is called karpas. Can everybody say karpas? This represents, remember, that spongy-like plant. It represents the hyssop, and instead of dipping it in grape juice, we're going to dip it in the salt water. Why? Because the salt water reminds us of all the tears that were shed while this is all going on, because the times things like that are going on. Let's take the karpas, representing the hyssop, dip it in the salt water, and then actually eat this. Pastor Tom, this is very salty. It's very good. Yes, sir.
We're not some of these wine diluted with water.
Is what?
Some of the different wine glasses, were they not diluted with water?
Not necessarily.
Not the Hebrew culture?
No. No. Are you talking about that Jewish people don't actually drink wine kind of thing?
No, I just thought that there was a progression with less water.
Are you talking specifically the Passover Seder meal?
Yes.
No. Okay. And just so you know, in my culture, what they usually do for like a Passover Seder, have you ever seen a wine? We call it Shabbos wine, like Sabbath wine. It's Monteshevitz. Have you ever heard of that brand?
Yeah.
Over Passover, we usually use that kind of wine. It's like a sweet wine, and it's almost like drinking grape juice, with a little spike to it. So you could like drink that for a month straight, and not stop and not even be affected. We call it Shabbos wine, And that's what you would have, so there would be no reason to dilute it. And it almost tastes like you're drinking cough medicine, you know, so, no.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So then the next thing is take a little matzah and break it maybe into a piece about this size. You guys all have matzah. And then we have here, we have white horseradish. Take some of the horseradish and spread it on the matzah. This is the bitter herbs, remember? So in Hebrew, the bitter herbs is called moror. Can everybody say moror? Moror. You got it. I think that's kind of close to a Swedish word for grandma or mom or grandma, something like that. I think that was all hard. And so we're going to do that on matzah, and everyone will partake of that. This moror is not super hot. I actually like it, where a little smoke comes out of your nose or your ears. I don't think this is that hot. If it is, I think we have a fire extinguisher over there and a drinking fountain. So if we have to hose anyone down, we can. Woo! This is the good stuff. Initially, I thought it was the wimpy stuff, but you did well. Since I lit my candles while we're doing this, if one of the ladies at each table will light the candles as well, that would be a good idea. You know what? Even though a little smoke came out of my nose, not much out of my ears. I thought it was pretty tasty. If you like more, raise your hand. Okay, there's your more. Now, we're going to do something pretty cool. There is, at every table, a chopped apple substance. Chopped apples, a little grape juice, either walnuts or almonds, a little bit of honey and maybe cinnamon, all mixed together, little grape juice. This is called charosef. It's a throat lever. Could you say charosef? You did good. Take some of the charosef and put it on a piece of matzah. And I want you to know this stuff is very tasty. It's like some of my favorite. And then we're going to take another piece of matzah and put it on top. What does this look like to you? Okay. But what was it that the Pharaoh told to Moses that he's not going to give him any more of? Bricks. Okay. Now, if this is a brick, then what's in the middle? Mortar. You got it. So, what happens with chopped apple mixture when you expose it to the air? Well, but it gets around. So isn't that cool? So this whole Passover Seder plate is like a journey, and it's a reminder of the bondage that we were delivered in our Egypt days before we made it through the wilderness into the promised land. Brothers and sisters, before we knew the Lord Jesus Christ, we had Egypt too. We had the bondage of sin, but when God provided the blood of the Lamb for us, so this experience of the bondage of the bricks that were in all of our life that we made for the enemy in our own disobedience, thank God for providing Jesus. Amen? So, everyone partake of a brick. Who is in charge of making this? You guys really did good. I want you to imagine in the future, we're here. We do a full sit-down meal. Meal is coming to an end. You did the plate, but there's still some matzah, a little bit of horseradish, depending on your taste buds. We'll finish with the meal. People are catching up with their friends. You're actually starting to get a little hungry again. Add in this new fresh bowls, fresh out of the refrigerator, nice and cool. Very good, very delicious. How do you like the more? Pretty good? liked the bitter herbs better than the chorosa? Anybody? No.
Was that you, Al? That was me.
Every place I go, there's a few people that like the horseradish better. Because you guys are special, we're going to do something unique. So let's take these from us again. Let's take the chorosa, and then take a little bit of bitter herbs and put that in there too.
You can put all the bitter herbs you want.
We're going to call this a hot and sour grape. This is not so much part of the journey, but it's part of the fun. And I want you to tell me how you like the sweet and sour grapes. We could start our own restaurant.
The thing is, you just can't have the water.
Is this horseradish homemade or did you purchase it? Who was the one who purchased it? Your neighbor.
It was very hard to find.
Really?
I just found it in the meat department that I did.
If you like prime rib, a lot of people like a little horseradish. This horseradish, you guys did such a beautiful. Now, who liked the hot and sour grapes? Did you like it? Did you like it better than? So who liked the hot and sour grapes the best? Oh my God. This church is absolutely great. Okay. Also on this plate, I brought something. I actually have a bag of them. We had a Passover Seder meal years ago, and the church, because we were, in an area kind of like this, and there were a lot of farms, so the pastor went to a butcher and he got a bunch of lamb shank bones. And so I asked him after the meal, could I have these to bring them home? And they got like little pieces of meat still left. Here he boiled it in bleach water, and then made me a big bag of these, and so now when I travel, I have these. And it's good. So there's a reason that the lamb shank bone is here. And most Jewish people, especially unsaved, during a Passover Seder meal, do not eat lamb. Now, all year long, there's a lot of people who grew up in farm communities or wherever eating pork. I grew up, we didn't eat pork products, but we ate lamb. But on this time of year, we don't eat lamb. Because remember what I was reading to you in the context of Jesus, that they were preparing the lambs for the sacrifice even in the day of Jesus. But now, they can't do that. Why can't they sacrifice lambs to celebrate the Passover at this point in time? What's lacking? So there's no place to sacrifice it. The temple doesn't exist. So this is a reminder for the Jewish people of what they used to do, what they can't do. Now we know that we are the temple. Maybe someday in the future, the temple will be rebuilt for a short period of time, not for our sake, but for the sake of the Jews, so that they realize that their promised Messiah, the Antichrist, is who's going to be a political figure, is not the true Messiah. Then they'll be double-crossed, and then they'll be ready for Jesus to come back. So, historical. I'm going to pass this around. Put that up to your nose, and you can still smell the lanolin. This is like 10 years old. Can you tell that that's like a lot different than a beef bone? It smells different. Then on this plate, we have a brown egg. I don't know if that was part of the original Passover Seder plate, but I have to say to myself, what does this mean to me? There was a ruler of the Jewish people who was sneaking at night to see Jesus. His name was Nicodemus. Remember this guy? And Nicodemus, he liked Jesus. He said, you know, Jesus, nobody can do the things that you do, the miracles that you do, unless God is with them. And all of a sudden, Jesus said, why do you call me good? There's nobody good except God alone. And he changes the subject exceedingly and says, you need to be born again. Nicodemus was poor. He said, born again? How can I go back into my mom's room a second time? And Jesus said, well, who was born of the flesh is flesh. He said, what I'm talking about is a spiritual rebirth. So this is kind of what this represents to me, that the whole theme of Passover is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, the first coming of Jesus, and the new birth, the better covenant that he offers to all human beings. On my left is a seat for Elijah. My grandpa and my dad, when we would celebrate the Passover, and my dad was an only child, born during Depression time, so my grandma and grandpa owned the grocery store, and you know, money was tight during those times. They just had one kid. I felt bad for doing that. But growing up, we would celebrate Passover always at my grandpa's, and either my dad or my grandpa would lead the Seder. So, actually, before the meal, my grandpa or my dad would take 3 matzahs, and they would say, Kohen. Can everyone say Kohen? Have you ever heard of Jewish people with the last name Cohen? You've heard this? Well, a Cohen is from the tribe of Levi, but they're actually not exactly Levites anymore because they're sons of Aaron, high priests. Now, if you say Cohen, that's a high priest. If you say Kohanim, even at the end of any Hebrew word, we make it plural, the line of Aaron, or the sons of Aaron, Kohanim. So, Kohen, and then everyone say, Levi? Levi. Yisrael. So these 3 matzahs represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And that's where my grandpa or dad would be. But I also believe it means something in addition. And you'll see why when I wrap things up in this coming video. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. My grandpa or my dad would take the middle matzah and pull it out. They would break it in 2. Now, you see what we have here? It's striped. You see the little piercings? These are not made by Messianic Jews. These are made by modern day company Stripes, Chevetz, Yehuda, whoever makes the matzahs, supervised by rabbis, and the reason they pierce it is just to keep it from rising. But there's no leaven in it. It can't really rise anyway like regular bread or cracker bread. But it's striped, it's pierced, it's broken. And then when my grandma made her delicious paprika chicken, and my mom got to cooking away matzo ball soup, oh my gosh, delicious, my grandpa would slip this in a napkin. What's all this burial cloth? And he would hide it somewhere in the room, and we actually never saw him doing it because we were distracted with our family, our mom or grandma's delicious food. And then a time would come, which is a tradition, the youngest in the family would have to find what's called afikomen. Can everybody say afikomen? In Greek, that means I have come. I have come. Who's come? And over here is the place setting for Elijah. Being the firstborn, the family would say to the firstborn, go open the front door. Crack it open for Elijah, because before the Messiah can come, Elijah must come first. And then Jesus fed off this. Remember, he says, the scripture says Elijah must come first, but he says if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, Elijah has already come in the form of John the Baptist. So I would crack the door open, and all night, when I was like 12 years old, I'd be staring at a couple of grape juice for Elijah to see if it went down at all. This is like Saturday Night Live kind of stuff, where I think they did a gig where it didn't go down. But I'd be looking all evening. Grandma, you want to put some food on Elijah's plate, this kind of thing. It was pretty traditional, pretty cool. And then my grandpa or dad I would say to the youngest, which was my brother Bruce, go find the afikoman. So eventually he would. The rest of the brothers or sisters or cousins could help. Now it's in my brother's hand. It's open. It's put into the hand of my grandpa or dad. They would give a gift to the youngest. So in the hand of my grandpa or dad, it's part of this part of the tradition. But now we're about to finish. I want you to imagine Jesus is doing the same thing. He's like the big brother, father figure among these apostles. And let's say that John Mark might have been the youngest. They're in the upper room. John Mark's mother, Miriam's home. Remember Barnabas, I think was his cousin or uncle. Now it's in the hand of Jesus. And see, in the hand of my grandpa, not such a big deal. In the hand of my dad, just dessert. But in the hand of Jesus, he's getting ready to institute communion. But what's in the hand of Jesus? The Son outside. Straight, broken, pierced, buried, resurrected now in the hand of Jesus. Could this have happened in the name of Jesus? It's very possible. Do I know for sure? Well, I wasn't there. But I'd like to imagine it happening, okay? The Son matzah is in the hand of the Son of God. And one thing I do know for sure, it says he took bread. This was no ordinary bread. It wasn't leavened bread. It was matzah bread. He took bread and gave thanks and broke it and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body which is given to you. Do this in remembrance of me." It says he gave thanks. Probably something like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the bread from the earth. Where was Jesus born? What city? Bethlehem. In Hebrew, Beit Lechem. Beit is house, Lechem bread. He who is the bread of life was born in the house of bread. Is this a coincidence? I don't think so. And now he has the bread in his hand. Take this, distribute it, do this in remembrance of me. So then it says, likewise, he also took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is shed for you." Jeremiah 31 through 34. It says, "Behold, the days come." And this, I'll share this on Sunday. This has to do with me being saved. "Behold, the days come, says the Lord, when I will enact," Prophet Jeremiah, "when I will enact a new covenant with the house of Judah and the house of Israel, not like the covenant which they broke when I took them as a husband by the hand. But this covenant they shall no longer say, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least to the greatest, for I will put my law in their heart and in their mind." So when did this transaction take place? Well, Jesus said, "This is the new covenant in my blood." For a new covenant to be enacted, one has to die. There has to be a death. Through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, the new covenant. And he's predicting all this, and he's saying we're supposed to celebrate Passover forever. How do we do that? Through the celebration of communion. And so what's really cool about communion is I'd like you to, maybe when you do communion, you'll never be the same, is when we do communion, what are we supposed to do before we partake? We are to search our heart for what? So we all agree that leaven is a type of sin. So now, Brother Tom, your pastor, he's going to lead you in communion. And as we bow our heads and we reflect, so think of this, right before we, on the 14th day, we would celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 14 days. My mom would kind of do a spring clean out the whole house with bread products, cake. And then my dad would go with the kids with a little feather, a brown bag, and we would search the house for leaven. Did I have a clue what we were doing? It was tradition. But again, when I became a believer, I go, oh my gosh, the Lamb of God. Search your house for sin. Leaven. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, the false doctrine, the sin, etc. So, Brother Tom, I'm turning it over to you. And so when we bow our heads, search your house for leaven. Oh, one thing before we do that. Could you do me a favor? I gave you a ministry brochure that just talks about why sports. Went over that. time of the offering, if you do me a favor, tear this off, write down your name, address, phone number, email. I would like to send you hard copies of our newsletter every other month. And I also do through email, I'll pass the contact. I'd like to give you permission, please. I would appreciate staying in touch with you all. If you put that in the, I don't know if you're doing offering backs or however you're doing it. If you write out a check, write it to Global Baseball, cash is cash. Or you can do it.
We love offering after community services. You know, it strikes me that what took place that night in the upper room that I don't know if you guys have there. I was close to it. Jesus was in there with the disciples, participating in something that the Jewish people have been doing for centuries, ever since Egypt, every year. But this year was different because it was coming to fulfillment, and it was on the Bible says on the very night that he was betrayed. He took bread. Later that night, they left the room, they went up to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus went out to pray. His disciples fell asleep. And shortly after, they came and arrested him and brought him into, they had an all-night illegal session to conjure up charges against him. And even his own disciples betrayed him. Peter betrayed him. The others fled. So on the night that he was betrayed, as he was participating in this centuries-old festival, he took bread and he gave thanks, and the Bible says he broke it, which is meaningful. And he said some words to them. I just lost them. He took bread, he gave thanks, he broke it, he gave it to them, saying, "This is my body. Take and eat, because it's given for you." So I would just invite you to take, you all have some of your unleavened bread at your table. What did Jesus say? As you take this, keep in mind, Jesus said, "This is my body." And in our tradition, we believe, going back centuries too, that when Jesus said that, he is present in this event. He's right here. He's in this event. It's a holy, sacred thing. This is my body. Take it. And it says, after they had their supper, their Passover meal, he took the cup and he gave thanks and he gave it for all of them to drink. He said, "This cup, as we heard, is the new covenant. It's in my blood, which is shed." He didn't say this, but he could have said it tomorrow when he said it that night. "Which will be shed tomorrow for you and for many." For only God knows the number of people. I mean, it's shed for everybody, but only God knows the number of people to whom it's applied to the doorposts of their heart. Shed for you and for many for the forgiveness of your sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. So I would invite you to take the juice. As we close our brief communion service tonight, we do it in our tradition. We say, "Our crucified and risen Lord Jesus Christ, who has now bestowed on you his holy body and blood, by which he has brought forgiveness to all of you. May your trust in that, your confidence in that, be strengthened this night. The true faith. The true faith. Let it guard your life. Let it be there always for you. We're going to say our Lord's Prayer together tonight as we close this, but it strikes me that something so ancient was brought to its climax that night. In an eternal plan that God had to fulfill, something he began. And your people still don't see the fulfillment of that, but they will one day. And many of you do, and many more are coming to that. And we have been blessed and have been brought in and grafted into that family. grace, given us understanding of what, even back in Egypt, it was all pointing to. It was that night and that next day. And it was fulfilled and it was free. And because of that, we have eternal life. So let's close in our prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.